Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere loud, bright, and unmistakably fragrant. The bustling heart of the Aztec Empire, the capital city of Tenochtitlan. You're standing at the edge of a vast causeway, where the lake shimmers like molten silver under the setting sun, and the air is thick with chilly smoke, flower garlands, and the suspicious aroma of burning something, possibly incense, possibly not. The streets are crowded, humming with market sellers, warriors, couriers, and nobles wrapped in cloaks so fine they shimmer like dragonfly wings. Every sound seems sharper here. The clap of sandals, the rustle of maize husks, the distant rhythm of temple drums, and you can feel it in your chest. This is not a city where you want to mess up. You'd better watch your step. Literally, the stonework's uneven, and the punishments for tripping over a noble's pet ocelot, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Tenochtitlan is not just the jewel of the empire, it's the center of a cosmic balance. Every building, every plaza, every grain of corn is sacred and supervised by laws older than the city itself. Here, a misplaced gesture might offend the gods. A bad joke could cost you more than your pride. And punishments? They range from mild public shaming to please no, not the fire ants levels of regret. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this sleepy little community reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive with nothing but a rough cotton cloak and a vague understanding that this city respects strength, discipline, and tradition. Not exactly tourist-friendly, you're ushered into a market by a merchant woman who seems to assume you know the basics of tribute taxation and spiritual cleanliness. You don't, not even close, and that's fine because we're going to learn the rules the way any outsider would, by breaking them. The first thing you notice, apart from the birds, so many birds, and the constant ringing of bells, is the sheer order of it all. Every vendor sits in the correct quadrant, maize in one, amaranth in another, obsidian tools along the outer edge. Prices are fixed, haggling is frowned upon, and chewing your tortilla too loudly might get you side-eyed by a priest. You think you're blending in until someone hisses at your sandals. You're wearing the wrong ones. Apparently, sandals with jade beads are reserved for nobility, and guess who's not nobility? You. Before you can apologize, a bustling line of local officials, each armed with paint-stained scrolls and disturbingly large sticks, swarm toward you like well-organized bees. One of them carries a clay pot filled with red dye. You quickly learn that they are not here to confiscate your sandals. They are here to dye your face red, permanently, as a mark of your arrogance. Historians still argue whether this practice was symbolic punishment or a literal long-term stain. Either way, the result is the same. A red-faced wanderer, clearly marked for mockery and extra surveillance. Congratulations. You've made it 7 minutes in Tenochtitlan before breaking a sumptuary law. And now everyone knows. You're paraded through the market. Children point. An old woman offers you a cactus paddle to sit on, out of pity or satire, you're not sure. One sympathetic merchant tells you in broken Nahuatl that you're lucky not to have been stripped of your cloak and tossed into the canal. Apparently, that's what happened last week to a man who wore gold earrings without a license. The canal is still talking about it. You try to redeem yourself by sitting quietly near a shrine. Surely, silent reflection is safe. Unfortunately, the shrine is reserved for merchants of obsidian, and you've just sat where only elite traders may pray. You're moved, gently but firmly, by a flower vendor wielding a broom scented with marigold and authority. It's becoming increasingly clear. This city isn't built for leniency, but it is built for spectacle, and punishment here, it's less about retribution and more about theatrical re-education. Even the music of punishment is choreographed. Wooden drums, conch shells, flute-like shrieks. When someone is being corrected, whether for theft or sass, the plaza doesn't just react, it performs. There's often dancing involved, and incense, sometimes feathers. You start to suspect the punishments are as much for the audience as for the offender. As the day fades, you're invited, sort of, to sleep in a commoner's hostel. It's crowded, loud, and smells faintly of roasted frogs. But you're lucky to have a place at all. Newcomers who offend one too many rules often find themselves tasked with scrubbing temple steps, using only reeds and tears. Before you sleep, a kind older man tells you about the sacred law scrolls. These are illustrated codebooks handed down through generations, where every crime has a matching doodle of its consequence. He describes one for public flatulence in a ceremonial line. The drawing, he says, includes a scowling priest, a wind symbol, and a very unfortunate man being dunked in a basket of chilly water. You nod respectfully and vow not to sneeze tomorrow, just in case. And with that, you curl up on a woven mat, surrounded by snores, hopes, and at least one possum. You close your eyes to the sound of distant drums and the faint, unforgiving whisper of Aztec justice. You're still wearing the wrong sandals. The market has barely stirred when you're jolted awake by the rattle of a drum and a voice hollering something you don't understand, but it's being repeated in a tone that suggests urgent obedience. Around you, sleepers rise like startled birds, rolling their mats and straightening their tunics with the mechanical grace of people who've done this 1,000 times. You scramble to your feet, trying not to trip over your own borrowed blanket or the possum, which appears to have moved into your satchel. Your sandals, still the wrong ones, still very much on your feet, and still drawing judgmental glances from an old woman eating breakfast cactus. You don't have time to worry, though, because there's something much more interesting, well, alarming, happening just 2 streets over. A crowd is forming at the center of a plaza. People murmur, eyes wide, as they cluster around a nervous-looking teenager flanked by 2 stern officials. One of the officials is holding an elaborate fan of quetzal feathers, long, iridescent green plumes that shimmer in the rising light. The other has a gourd of black ink and a set of carving tools. The boy in the middle looks like he wants to sink through the earth. Word trickles through the crowd, and you catch it eventually. Pluma robo, feather theft. Now, in any other society, you might think, oh dear, perhaps a fine, maybe a short prison term, but this is Tenochtitlan. Here, feather theft is not just larceny, it's a spiritual insult, an aesthetic offense, and an act of treason rolled into one itchy, colorful mess. The feathers in question are sacred, especially those from the resplendent quetzal bird. They're not just decorative, they're divine. Reserved for royalty, priests, and certain high-ranking warriors, each feather is catalogued and counted like gemstones. Stealing one is like snatching the emperor's crown or pocketing a piece of the sun. It's not petty crime, it's cosmic disrespect. The boy's mistake, apparently, was swiping a few feathers from a workshop and trying to braid them into a dance costume. He probably thought he could sneak them in unnoticed. He was wrong. Very wrong. A hush falls as the lead official steps forward, ink brush raised. In one swift move, he paints a thick black streak across the thief's nose and cheeks. It's a mark of shame, a facial tattoo made not of needles, but of public memory. That stain will linger, visible to everyone, branding him a feather thief for life. But wait, there's more. Next comes the carving. Not onto the boy, no. That would be barbaric by Aztec standards. Instead, A long wooden plank is brought forward, and the boy's name is chiseled into it, along with a pictograph of his crime, a stick-figure man reaching toward a feather with an exaggeratedly guilty grin. The board will hang in the marketplace for a full lunar cycle. Public humiliation? Check. Permanent reputation damage? Double check. Historians still argue whether these punishments were designed more to shame than to physically harm. Many Aztec penalties leaned into ritual embarrassment rather than bodily cruelty, though, to be clear, bodily cruelty was always an option on the table. In this case, the boy is lucky. He isn't whipped, he isn't flayed, and he isn't, thank every feathered god, assigned to sweeping the temple of Huitzilopochtli while being pelted with chili seeds. That's a real punishment, by the way, and the seeds sting. As the crowd begins to disperse, a friendly merchant whispers a warning to you. Never touch the feathers. You nod emphatically. You will not even look at the feathers anymore. Feathers are dead to you, or rather, you will act like you are dead to them, because that seems safer. But this little incident gets you thinking. What is it about feathers that makes them such a powerful cultural currency? You learn from a local elder that in the Aztec worldview, feathers represented the sky, movement, divine will, everything that soars. They were thought to carry prayers up to the heavens and pull blessings down in return. Warriors wore them in headdresses not just for flair, but to show divine favor. Priests used them in purification rituals, and every single feather had to be acquired honestly, often through tribute systems that stretched across hundreds of miles. So when someone stole one, it wasn't just a personal offense. It was like poking a hole in the celestial order. You can't help but notice how many people keep looking at the thief's newly inked face as he walks past, head bowed, trying to vanish. No one yells, no one jeers. The shame here is silent but thick as honey. Later that afternoon, you're offered a job helping a local craftsman who makes ceremonial fans. The work is light. You sort feathers, polish beads, and very pointedly do not pocket anything. But the craftsman watches you with the cautious respect one might give a scorpion in a clay jar. You ask if he's ever had a thief before. He nods. My cousin, he says. Once he took 3 feathers to impress a girl. You lean in, curious. What happened to him? The craftsman sighs. The girl married a maize merchant. My cousin lives in a mountain cave. You nod solemnly. Note to self, never try to impress a girl with stolen divinity. As the sun dips behind the temples, casting long shadows across the marketplace, you can't help but reflect on the elegance and intensity of this punishment system. The Aztecs believed deeply in balance, in correcting wrongs, not just to restore justice, but to realign the spiritual harmony of the universe. So when they ink your face or carve your name into shame planks, it's not just because you've done wrong. It's because you've knocked the stars slightly out of alignment, and someone has to put them back. Hopefully not with chili seeds. You wake up with a plan. Today, you're going to stay out of trouble. You won't borrow feathers, misstep onto shrines, or wear class-inappropriate footwear. You'll blend in, keep your head down, maybe help someone carry some maize, and glide through the day with all the serenity of a pond turtle. That plan lasts about 11 minutes. Because that's when you discover, quite by accident, that you're late, and not just late, but late to market. The horror. In most societies, tardiness is impolite. In Aztec society, it's a moral failing. Punctuality was a kind of devotion, especially when it came to markets. These weren't just places to buy fish, and gossip markets were sacred expressions of cosmic order, regulated down to the minute by a network of timekeepers, city elders, and deeply nosy aunties. You stroll in, Just as the morning bell finishes its third echo, every vendor is already seated, goods arranged in perfect, ritual-aligned quadrants. You, however, are still holding a bundle of radishes you were supposed to deliver at sunrise. The radish woman sees you. Her eyes narrow with the quiet fury of someone who has definitely reported a neighbor to the local tribunal before. "You're late," she hisses. "I'm here now," you offer, hopefully. Too late. A patrol has noticed. Now you may be wondering why tardiness is such a big deal. The Aztecs believed that the success of daily life, markets, rituals, agriculture, depended on alignment with the sun and celestial patterns. Being late was an act of disharmony, a subtle snub to the gods, and nobody snubbed the gods, not unless you wanted to be publicly exfoliated with rough maize husks. You're marched, not cruelly, but firmly to a nearby kiosk staffed by justice officials. One of them, a man with half an eyebrow and a dazzling cloak of woven frogs, yes, frogs, listens to your excuse with professional indifference. "I got lost," you say. "There was a possum situation." He nods, standard excuse, then he gestures to the punishment mat. It's just a woven mat, but as you'll soon learn, Aztec punishments had a flair for theatrical minimalism. You're told to remove your cloak and stand barefoot. You obey. The frog cloak official clears his throat, addresses the gathering crowd, and announces your crime in a voice like honey being poured over gravel. "Late to market." Gasps ripple through the onlookers. Then comes your sentence. No beatings, no chili rubs, no feather plucking. You're to wear your cloak backwards for the rest of the day. That's it. But don't laugh just yet. This punishment, used commonly for lesser offenses, was genius in its simplicity. It marked you instantly. Backward clothing made everyone aware of your failure to honor the social rhythm. Vendors refused to sell you things. Children followed you, asking what horrible thing you did. At one point, a priest threw a bean at your forehead and muttered a prayer for time-related demons. You are officially the embarrassment of the morning. Historians still argue whether this form of punishment was more symbolic or shaming in practice. Some claim it had roots in fertility rituals, others that it simply made people reflect, literally, on their behavior. Either way, it worked. You will never be late again. As the sun rises higher, you shuffle around the plaza, backward cloak flapping like a banner of defeat. You deliver the radishes. The woman sniffs and refuses your apology. You offer her a beat in penance. She accepts. Progress. Later, a friendly guard takes pity on you and explains the spectrum of tardiness penalties. Being late to market was minor. Being late to temple could get you stripped of your job. Being late to a sacrificial rite, that might get you substituted into the rite. He grins. You do not. There are legends, he tells you, of a famous tax collector who once showed up a full day late to a tribute inventory. The penalty: he had to spend a moon cycle wearing only ceremonial paper and apologizing to trees. Trees. You ask if that's a metaphor. He says no. You pass a group of dancers rehearsing for a festival. One of them points at your backward cloak and snickers. Another whispers something about reverse wind spirits. You consider hiding in a tortilla stall. Instead, you decide to lean into it. You spend the afternoon helping the sanitation team sweep feathers from the temple steps. They appreciate your help and your humility. You find yourself strangely at peace. There's something freeing about embracing your mistakes so publicly. Plus, backward cloaks are breezier. As dusk settles, a market official approaches you with a smile. You've served your time, he says. You may turn your cloak. It feels like a coronation. You rotate your cloak back to its proper dignity. The radish woman gives you a respectful nod. Even the children who followed you earlier now wave shyly instead of snickering. It's subtle, but it's a redemption. Later, as you sit watching the stars twinkle above the temple towers, you think about the brilliance of this society, how its laws weren't always brutal, but often clever, how they enforced order not just with fear, but with rituals that made you part of the healing. You adjust your now forward cloak and smile. Tomorrow, you will be early. You wake up even earlier this time. Still dark. The city hasn't stirred yet, just the whisper of lake water against the causeway stones and the muffled cough of someone boiling maize in a nearby courtyard. You are going to be early for everything today. Early to market, early to your bead polishing side gig, early to avoid humiliation. So it's deeply unfair that your neighbor, the one who sells tamales from a clay oven, opens her mouth the moment she sees you and says, "You smell like pulque." Pulque. You, the stranger who can't even locate the right plaza most mornings, somehow reeking of the fermented maguey drink that is both a delicacy and a potential death sentence. You try to laugh it off, but other heads are turning. And this isn't good, because if the Aztecs hated tardiness, they despised public drunkenness. More specifically, if you were an elite adult man, drinking pulque was fine in moderation, in ritual, in private. But if you were a youth or a commoner, or, heavens forbid, visibly intoxicated in public, you might as well paint a target on your face and ask to be sacrificed. Now to clarify, you are not drunk. You did not drink pulque. But last night, after your backward cloak redemption, someone spilled a jug of the stuff near the market steps, and in your enthusiasm to help sweep it up, well, your cloak may have absorbed a whiff. Unfortunately, the law is less interested in nuance than in spectacle. A whistle shrills. Two officials with face paint like jaguar spots march toward you. One has a scroll. The other has a rope made of agave fibers. You try to explain, hands raised, that it was an accident, yet your cloak just has strong opinions. They are unmoved. You are taken to a public square. A crowd gathers, again. The jaguar-faced official reads from the scroll, "Public drunkenness without divine sanction." This particular charge is one of the more serious offenses in Aztec society. Why? Because intoxication was considered an opening to the spiritual realm, and unless you were a sanctioned priest or an elder on festival duty, that portal was strictly off-limits. The gods might whisper secrets into your ear, but they also might send you straight into disgrace, or worse. You begin to panic. You're not sure what the punishment will be, but you've heard stories. A man who drank too much during a funeral rite was once forced to clean temple stairs with his tongue. Another was given the infamous chili smoke mask, a clay helmet filled with burning peppers, worn until repentance or unconsciousness. Historians still argue whether these punishments were consistent or symbolic. Some say the chili mask was metaphorical, a warning tale told by elders. Others point to temple murals that seem to show a man screaming in a cloud of suspiciously spicy fumes. Thankfully, your fate is gentler. Because you are a guest, and because your alleged intoxication was only by scent, you are sentenced to a performance. You will act out the dangers of drunkenness in the central plaza, wearing a costume made of maguey fibers and holding a gourd labeled "Bad Choices." Yes, it's humiliating. Yes, children laugh. Yes, someone throws a small tortilla. But it's better than the chili mask. Your performance is brief but memorable. You stagger dramatically. You clutch the gourd. You pretend to fall into a cactus. The elders nod approvingly. A woman gives you a tiny tamale afterward. You suspect she is the playwright. After the crowd disperses, one of the officials debriefs you. The law is not cruel, he says, only poetic. You believe him. The deeper you explore Aztec justice, the more you see the artistry in it. These weren't arbitrary punishments, they were tailored, theatrical, embedded in ritual. They taught lessons while preserving dignity, at least most of the time. Later that afternoon, you attend a real pulque ceremony. Here, in a dimly lit courtyard surrounded by flickering torches and chanting elders, pulque is passed reverently in carved bowls. It's thick, cloudy, mildly sweet. The drink is sacred here, offered to the gods before the first sip, and every motion, every pour, every toast is choreographed like a dance. No one gets drunk. Instead, they get quiet, thoughtful, a little misty-eyed. It's not a party, it's communion. One of the elders leans over and whispers, "This is not for fun, it is for memory." You nod and take the tiniest sip. Later, you walk home under the stars, carrying the costume of shame which, truth be told, was surprisingly comfortable. You hang it on a peg next to your sandals, which are now mercifully plain and legally unremarkable. You learned something today, that not all intoxication is criminal, only the kind that forgets its place in the cosmic story. And in the Aztec Empire, even a little misunderstanding can become a full-blown morality play. But also, never wear pulque-scented anything before dawn. That's just good advice. You've begun to think that you might just be cursed. Not dramatically so, not snake grows out of your ear cursed, but the slow, persistent trickle of minor misfortunes that seem tailor-made to make you look foolish in front of important people. Take today, for instance. You were doing well. You were early to morning duty, avoided all suspicious beverages, and even helped an elderly man carry his basket of squash without dropping anything. You were feeling confident. You even considered smiling. And then someone sneezed. Not on you, next to you. But that sneeze, launched at precisely the wrong moment, knocked over a ceremonial bundle of incense sticks just as a priest was passing by. The bundle rolled. The priest tripped. His ceremonial headdress, a spectacular arrangement of rid feathers, gold discs, and what may have been a taxidermied hummingbird, flew into the air like a startled parrot and landed squarely on your head. There was a moment of silence, so deep you could hear the lake thinking. You took off the headdress. You handed it back. You apologized in 3 languages. But the damage was done, because technically, you had just performed a ritual impersonation of a priest. And technically, that was grounds for public reprimand and, depending on the circumstances, punishment. So now, here you are again, standing in a familiar public square, trying to explain to another very unimpressed tribunal that the only thing you're guilty of is a proximity-based hat incident. They do not find that persuasive. Instead, they consult a scroll. They whisper, they gesture. Finally, the elder judge, a woman whose stern expression could sour milk, delivers your sentence. You will clean the temple courtyard wearing a fragrant wreath of coyote dung and flower petals. The symbolism is lost on no one. In Aztec society, impersonating a priest was not a casual misdemeanor. Priests weren't just religious figures, they were gatekeepers of cosmic balance, interpreters of celestial rhythms, and professionals in what can only be described as extremely high-stakes theater. Wearing their garments even by accident was akin to borrowing the gods' pajamas. It simply wasn't done. Historians still argue whether the punishments for such acts were uniformly enforced or varied by status. Some sources describe public floggings. Others reference extended fasting under priestly supervision. You, meanwhile, are assigned coyote dung and garden duty. The wreath, to your surprise, smells less awful than you feared. It's floral, with a subtle hint of fermented regret. As you sweep the temple courtyard, children giggle, and a vendor offers you a dried tamarind fruit with a sympathetic wink. You take it, partly out of gratitude, and partly to distract yourself from your increasingly aromatic ensemble. An older priest approaches as you clean. His robes are simpler than the one you accidentally borrowed, but his gaze is thoughtful. He watches you work for a while before saying, "The gods are not easily offended, but they do enjoy a good story." You smile weakly. "I think I'm giving them plenty." He nods. "Indeed, but remember, the point of punishment is not pain, it is memory." That phrase again. You're beginning to understand its weight. After you complete your shift, and after a generous rinsing with river herbs, you are pardoned. Not forgiven, exactly, but no longer required to smell like a carnivore's breakfast. The priest gives you a token, a small clay disc with a spiral etched into it. For reflection, he says. You carry it with you for the rest of the day, rubbing the spiral with your thumb, wondering how many others have held it in similar disgrace. Later, over a humble meal of roasted beans and amaranth, you learn more about the priesthood. Initiates trained from childhood, memorizing complex rituals, chants, and astronomical calendars. Many practiced fasting, bloodletting, and extreme discipline. Their garments were sacred, not because they were expensive, but because they were earned. You begin to see how serious your accidental cosplay was. Still, you were lucky. There are stories half legend, half warning, of one young man who tried to impersonate a priest to impress a girl. He managed to sneak into a festival in full garb and perform a ritual dance backwards. He was caught mid-spin. His punishment? He was required to carry a carved wooden idol of the sun god on his back for 10 days, walking barefoot through cactus fields. Each night, he had to sing hymns of apology to the stars. No word on whether the girl was impressed. As twilight deepens and you sit near the temple steps, free at last of your aromatic necklace, you feel a strange peace. You didn't mean to offend the gods, but you may have amused them. And in this world, that's almost better. You twirl the clay spiral between your fingers and whisper, "Thank you for not assigning me cactus duty." Somewhere, a hummingbird lands on a nearby altar. It does not appear angry. You've begun to understand something important about Tenochtitlan. Survival isn't just about following the rules. It's about understanding which rules matter most. And among the truly sacred customs, few are as fraught with risk as the handling of cacao. Yes, chocolate. You've heard whispers of it in the markets. That smooth, bitter drink used in ceremonies, courtship, and of course, commerce. Cacao beans function as currency here, literal money you can eat, though most people don't unless they're absurdly wealthy or unusually hungry. So it's a big deal when someone tampers with it. You're standing in the corner of a busy marketplace when the shouting begins. A merchant is screaming not angrily, but with theatrical despair. "Fake beans," he cries, holding a small bowl aloft. "Someone is selling counterfeits." This is not a metaphor. He dumps the bowl onto the ground. The beans clatter and roll, and immediately the crowd gasps. They know the signs. Too round, too light, a slight powder residue. These aren't cacao, they're carefully shaped clay imitations painted and polished to mimic the real thing. A scam, a chocolate forgery. And in the Aztec Empire, that is extremely illegal. Before long, officials arrive. The culprit is a young man barely older than you, who stands frozen beside his stall. His eyes dart wildly. His bowl of fakes sits abandoned behind him. He doesn't speak. He doesn't run. He knows it's over. The merchant is indignant. "This boy would poison the economy," he says, which sounds dramatic until you remember that cacao is money. Faking cacao is like minting your own coins while standing in the middle of a bank. You edge closer. The officials consult their scrolls. One flips to a pictograph that looks ominously like a chocolate pod wearing a frown. They whisper, they nod, then one turns to the accused. You will drink the punishment brew. The crowd murmurs, even the vendor recoils slightly. This is something new. The punishment brew is not a standard penalty. It's used for specific crimes of deception, especially those involving food, trust, and sacred commodities. The exact ingredients are a secret, known only to justice priests and herbal specialists, but the results universally dreaded. The officials prepare it on the spot. You watch, fascinated and horrified, as they crush chilies, herbs, and dried insects into a thick paste. They mix it with water, then pour the mixture into a polished gourd. It bubbles faintly, smells like shame and regret. The accused drinks. He lasts 3 seconds before coughing violently. 5 before his eyes water. 7 before he begins pacing in tiny circles, whispering something about frogs and destiny. The crowd nods solemnly. Justice has been served hot, spicy, and internal. Historians still argue what exactly the punishment brew contained. Some suggest it had hallucinogenic properties. Others say it was purely medicinal, meant to purge the liar's tongue and memory at once. Either way, it wasn't fatal, just unforgettable. Later, you find yourself talking to an elder merchant who's witnessed many such incidents. He tells you the fake bean trick is old, dating back generations. Some forgers got clever, hiding real beans beneath layers of clay. Others stuffed cacao pods with crushed avocado pits or toasted maize. But the gods always know, the merchant says, tapping his temple. You ask him what the worst punishment for cacao fraud ever was. He thinks for a moment. One man, he says, mixed cacao with rabbit dung, claimed it was ceremonial. When caught, he had to parade through the marketplace dressed as a cacao tree, with squirrels tied to his arms. You blink. Squirrels? He nods. They were trained, a little. You never discover if he's joking. That night, as you sip a small, real bowl of cacao, slightly bitter, flavored with honey and chili, you reflect on how even pleasure has its limits here. In the Aztec world, indulgence is allowed, but only with sincerity. A fake bean isn't just a scam, it's a cosmic offense. You've lied to the land itself. You watch the stars rise above the city's great causeways, the lake reflecting constellations with impossible stillness. Somewhere, the boy who drank the punishment brew is probably still sweating out frogs. And you finish your cacao in silent gratitude. Then carefully wash the bowl, twice. It begins with bells. Low, rhythmic, patient, like someone slowly counting down a list of names. You're in the outer courtyard of a temple when you hear them. At first, you think it's the usual morning chimes marking the sun's climb. But no, this rhythm is different. This is the bell of warning. You turn and see the priest. Slumped on the temple steps, motionless, robes askew, one sandal missing. A group of elderly worshippers nearby whisper behind their hands, scandalized. A child points. Someone hisses he fell asleep. Fell asleep, on duty, during a ritual. You don't know who gasps louder, the woman with the flower wreath or the man sharpening incense burners, but the sound spreads like wildfire. The priest stirs, eyes blinking in confusion. The bells continue. You can see the realization dawn on his face. He has made a grave mistake. In Aztec culture, temple rituals were not optional shifts. They were sacred performances, synchronized with divine rhythms. A sleeping priest wasn't just a tired employee. He was a cosmic breach, a lazy link in the sacred chain, a momentary absence in the presence of the gods. And the gods noticed everything. The disciplinary officials arrive quickly, robes dark and stiff with age, expressions unreadable. They speak in low tones. The priest offers no defense. He simply bows his head and clasps his hands as if already beginning his penance. You are told later, by a spice vendor who saw the whole thing, that this was not the priest's first offense. Once, during a minor rain dance rite, he had been seen blinking suspiciously slowly. Another time, he had mispronounced the word for sacred frog and instead invoked sizzling toad. It added up. So the punishment, not public flogging, not chilly masks, not even garden duty. They choose flaying. No, not his flaying. He must oversee the flaying of a deer, an animal sacred to certain seasonal rites, and prepare its hide for ceremonial banners. This is not an honor. It is a grim, humbling task usually reserved for novices or wayward youth. And it takes days. You watch as the priest, now stripped of his rank insignia, works in a shaded corner of the temple compound. The deer, already prepared through ritual sacrifice, must be skinned with precision, scraped clean, stretched over a wooden frame, and dried with sacred herbs. No mistakes allowed. The skin will be used in a high ceremony to honor Totec, the god of renewal and flayed rebirth. Historians still argue whether the use of flaying as punishment was symbolic or disciplinary. Some suggest it reflected the Aztec belief in cyclical suffering, that rebirth required discomfort. Others argue it was simply theocratic micromanagement taken to its logical, leathery conclusion. Whatever the truth, it's grueling work. You pass the priest each day for nearly a week. He doesn't speak, he barely looks up, but his movements are careful, measured. There's something penitential in the way he scrapes, like each stroke of the blade is erasing a portion of shame. Meanwhile, the temple continues to function, drums beat, incense curls skyward, offerings of maize and cacao are laid at altars, and yet everyone knows. The priest is still there, kneeling in the corner, a soft rustle of hide and herb the only sound around him. One morning, you're invited to watch the final inspection. The hide is now taut and golden in the sun. The officiating high priest runs his hand across it, nods once, and declares it worthy of ceremony. Then, with deliberate slowness, he places a single painted feather at the corner marking forgiveness. You don't see the disgraced priest again after that. Some say he left for a smaller shrine outside the city, a quiet posting with fewer expectations. Others whisper that he requested a vow of silence and became a firekeeper, tending the eternal flame in the mountain temple. Either way, he was given the chance to return, to heal, to transform. Just like the deer. That night, you sit at the temple steps, looking up at the moon as it balances low over the water. You think about sleep, the warm trap of it, the seductive heaviness, and how it can ruin a life or redeem it. You also think, very seriously, about avoiding any naps near incense burners. Because in Tenochtitlan, even your dreams have consequences. It starts with hair. Not your hair, yours is already plain, well-combed, safely boring. No, it's his hair, the boy striding through the market like a conquering hero, black locks tied in a double-knot warrior braid, complete with a strip of red-dyed cotton woven through. People stare. Not because he's particularly tall or muscular, he isn't, but because that hairstyle, that is not his to wear. It's the topknot of a proven warrior. A style earned only after capturing an enemy in battle and presenting the prisoner to the gods. Each twist and braid in the hair represents a specific rank, each color, a deed performed. And this kid, bare arms, no scars, no regalia, definitely no war captives trailing behind. He is a fraud. You know what's coming before it happens. An elder guard approaches him in the middle of a tortilla stall. He doesn't run. Instead, he shrugs, like he's just wearing it for the aesthetic. A few teenagers nearby giggle. One of them mimics his strut. Another pretends to faint at his bravery. It's all very charming, until the guard signals for a tribunal. Because in the Aztec Empire, unauthorized hairstyles are not taken lightly. To us, it might sound trivial, just a haircut, a fashion choice. But in this world, hair is identity. It tells your story before your mouth can. Priests shave theirs to honor humility. Nobles let theirs grow long, a cascade of status. Warriors braid theirs with feathers, shells, and sometimes even tiny bones to mark their honors. To Mswear, a style isn't just tacky, it's offensive. It's stealing someone else's story. The punishment? Not jail, not whipping, no need for public chili. Instead, it's a correction ceremony. The youth is brought to a modest courtyard. A gathering forms. There's laughter, but also a kind of reverent hush. This is part theater, part discipline, a ritual haircutting. A low bench is brought out. He sits. A temple barber arrives, wielding obsidian blades so sharp they make your teeth itch. Two assistants stand by, holding a basin and a bowl of river water infused with marigold. The ceremony begins. A priest recites a brief chant, something about false warriors and misplaced ambition. Then, with the steady hands of someone who has done this many times, the barber begins to slice through the braid. Clean, silent, irreversible. Each snip is greeted by a soft "ah" from the crowd. Not mocking, more like a shared recognition of boundary reasserted. The red cotton strip is held aloft, then burned in a small incense pot. The smoke curls into the morning air, symbolic of a lie being released, nullified. And then comes the best part, the shame cap. It's a soft woven bonnet, colored with mud-brown dye and stitched with basic geometric patterns. Entirely unfashionable, almost aggressively plain, it screams, "I got ahead of myself." He must wear it for 9 days. You later learn from a local historian, a chatty maize vendor with suspiciously good recall, that hairstyle offenses were surprisingly common. Young men, eager to impress or attract partners, sometimes mimicked warriors or priests. The shame cap was the usual remedy. For repeat offenders, more elaborate versions were made. One even had stitched in apologies in pictograph form. Historians still argue whether this practice was punitive or educational. Some say the public correction was essential for maintaining order in a society where outward signs mattered as much as deeds. Others believe it was a gentle way to redirect youthful arrogance without causing permanent harm. You approach the boy later that day. He looks sheepish, cap pulled low. You offer him a roasted grasshopper in solidarity. He smiles a little. "It looked good, though," he mutters. You nod, "Too good." That evening, you notice something funny. A few other boys in the hostel start fussing with their own hairstyles. Nothing flashy, just careful adjustments. A braid smoothed out, a feather quietly removed. The message is clear. The rules matter. You spend the night braiding someone else's hair, an elder whose fingers have grown too stiff to manage it herself. She thanks you with a soft bundle of sage and a story about a boy who once wore the emperor's style on a dare and ended up picking beans in a duck pond for a month. You promise her you'll never do anything so foolish. But deep down, you kind of want to see the duck pond. You're starting to enjoy the quieter corners of the city, the tucked-away plazas where children chase balls made of rubber sap, and elderly couples barter for tamale leaves with quiet dignity. It's peaceful, uncomplicated. No feathers, no fermented accusations, no judgmental possums. So when you hear the splash, followed by the most dramatic "ha" you've ever heard, you're almost annoyed. You turn the corner, and there it is, a canoe race, not the grand kind held at lake festivals, with nobles in jeweled boats, No, this is something humbler, local, and somehow more intense. Young men and women line up in hand-carved canoes, muscles tensed, paddles ready, faces glistening with both sweat and extreme competitiveness. And one of them has just flipped into the water, which wouldn't be unusual except for the way the crowd reacts. There's no sympathy, no laughter, just a collective murmur that sounds like sabotage. You're intrigued. Two officials wade into the shallows. They drag out the capsized paddler and his canoe. Then they examine it, carefully. Like investigators at a crime scene, they find it, a small lump of hardened sap stuck near the keel, deliberately placed to throw off balance, subtle but effective. Sabotage confirmed. Eyes turn to the racer in the next lane over. He's already paddling away, slowly, casually, suspiciously. He is caught within minutes. What follows is a flurry of dramatic confrontation, denials, finger-pointing, one long-winded monologue involving a jealous cousin and an eel. But the evidence is clear. He tampered with a rival's canoe. That, in the Aztec world, is not just cheating. It's interfering with sacred sport. You see, canoe races weren't just entertainment. They were training grounds for warriors, tests of discipline, offerings to water deities, and especially in a society that prized ritualized combat, they were a way to prove yourself without drawing blood. To cheat at one was like forging a battle wound, a lie against honor. The punishment? He is sentenced to paddle in circles for a full day. Literally. On a marked course, under supervision, with a clay pot balanced on his head. If it falls, he starts over. The logic, brilliant. This wasn't about pain. It was about shame, repetition, and spectacle. His dishonor becomes public art. Children watch. Elderly women comment loudly on his posture. A duck appears to heckle him. By hour 3, he's drenched, dizzy, and covered in lakeweed. His pot has fallen 3 times. A musician begins composing a little song about his paddling failures. It catches on disturbingly fast. You ask an official if this is a common punishment. He nods. It teaches balance, he says, of the canoe, of the soul. Historians still argue whether these punishments were codified or customized. Some claim that each misdeed had a scroll-prescribed sentence. Others believe that local judges often improvised, using humor and ritual as guiding principles. Either way, this one is effective. By sunset, the saboteur is exhausted, humbled, and thoroughly weed-scented. He bows deeply to the race officials and the victim. Then, in a final act of penance, he repairs the sabotaged canoe himself under watchful eyes. You spend the rest of the evening sitting by the water, chewing roasted maize, reflecting on justice. In your world, punishment is often private: fines, courtrooms, closed doors. Here, it's public, embodied, educational, humiliating, yes, but also, oddly, community building. You wonder if every society might benefit from a little ritualized canoe circling. Just maybe not with ducks. Today, you're in the central plaza again, because apparently you like trouble now, and something feels off. The sun is bright, the drums are slow and ceremonial, but the air carries a tension you can taste. People are gathering, not to watch a festival or cheer a race, but to witness a trial, and not just any trial. A court perjury hearing. You edge closer, joining the crowd at a respectful distance behind a snack vendor who is already halfway through a tamale. In the center of the plaza stands a man you've seen before, a grain merchant known for his exceptional mustache and very firm opinions on bean pricing. Across from him is another man, quiet, thin, wearing robes with the insignia of a landowner. Neither is smiling. The accusation: lying under oath during a land dispute. In Aztec legal tradition, this is no small slip of the tongue. Lying in court wasn't just bad form, it was a spiritual contamination. The courts weren't only for settling human disputes, they were forums of balance, overseen by gods of justice and order. To lie there was to spit in the face of divine equilibrium. The punishment varies, depending on intent and impact. This one, he lied about property boundaries. A sacred maize-growing parcel was taken based on his false testimony. The case was reopened when the original landholder produced a map, painted on deerskin and blessed by a priest, that clearly contradicted the mustache man's version. The judges, tall and robed in patterned cotton, listen carefully, hands clasped, eyes sharp. Then they declare the verdict, perjury confirmed. The sentence? He must wear a tongue stone for 3 days. Now, if you're wondering what that is, it's not as horrifying as it sounds, but it's not fun either. A tongue stone is a symbolic object, small, flat, often obsidian or baked clay, tied with twine and placed to hang from the mouth like a shame pendant. It doesn't pierce the tongue, but it does press against it, making speech difficult, eating miserable, and conversation a comedic hazard. He tries to protest ironically, making it worse. One judge gestures, and the punishment is immediately enacted. The stone is inscribed with a glyph, a disembodied mouth with little serpents slithering out of it. Subtle. He wears it through the market, lips pursed awkwardly, drooling slightly. Children are told to learn from him. Merchants whisper blessings against bad testimony, and his customers, they evaporate. Later, you learn that this wasn't always the standard sentence. Some liars, especially repeat offenders, had to wear entire ceremonial masks shaped like monkey faces, a nod to the trickster god. Others were forced to publicly confess their lie to everyone affected, naming each person out loud. That one's known as the name-burning ritual. Historians still argue how often these were used. Some suggest that exaggeration crept into colonial reports, but the artistic record, codices, filled with wide-eyed liars drooling around mouthstones, suggests it was real enough. At sunset you see him again. He's sitting by a canal, stone removed now, sipping water with great care. He sees you watching and shrugs. There's shame in his eyes, but also relief, maybe. He's paid the price. He gets to go on. A woman nearby tells you, the gods prefer an honest fool to a clever liar. You nod, and then wonder if the gods would approve of your occasional embellishments, like when you told the canoe judge you knew how to swim. Technically true, but not very well. You take a long walk around the lake that night, letting the silence soak into your bones. You think about truth, not just in words, but in deeds, in how you carry yourself, even when no one's watching, and how, in a society built on ritual and symbol, the smallest lie can ripple all the way to the temples. You stop by a priest's stall and ask quietly if they ever forgive first offenses. He smiles. We always forgive the first lie, he says. The second one, we decorate. The sun is hot today. Not just sweaty brow hot, bake your sandals to the ground hot. The kind of heat that softens stone and shortens tempers. You're volunteering at a modest food shrine just off the main avenue, where offerings of maize, beans, and tortillas are arranged with painstaking symmetry. And that's where the trouble begins. Because someone, an apprentice cook, new to the shrine and possibly cursed with the same luck as you, has made a batch of undercooked tortillas. Now, in your world, undercooked food is an inconvenience, maybe a health risk, possibly a Yelp review. Here, it's sacrilege. Tortillas aren't just food in the Aztec Empire, they're prayer. Every step of their creation, from grinding the nixtamalized maize to patting them into perfect circles, is done with ritual care. They're offered to gods, to ancestors, to the flames of communal hearths. An undercooked tortilla isn't just soggy, it's a broken vow. The priest overseeing the shrine tastes one. He stops chewing. The crowd, sensing danger, steps back. Someone drops a bean. You and the apprentice exchange panicked glances. And then the sentence is delivered, in a tone so soft it chills the sweat off your back. The dough has offended the gods. The punishment? The cook must endure the tortilla walk of correction. This is not, as you imagine, a gentle stroll accompanied by pastry lectures. No, this is thematic punishment at its best. First, he is handed a clay griddle flat, wide, and heavy. It is still warm from the fire. He must carry it through the market on his head while chanting an apology to May's mother for each step. Around his neck, a necklace of slightly burnt tortillas, still steaming, releasing a scent somewhere between remorse and breakfast. This will last until he makes a perfect tortilla, publicly, under inspection. You follow the procession, equal parts fascinated and horrified. Children walk beside him, offering unsolicited tips. Turn faster, more water. Don't cry into the masa, it's oddly wholesome. At the testing station, a portable comel set up under an awning, the cook is handed ingredients. The inspector, a woman known only as Mother Crisp, stands nearby, arms folded, eyebrow cocked like a hawk that grades breakfast. The first tortilla, too thick, disqualified. The second, tears in the edge, a disgrace. The third, slightly off-center, he weeps. But the fourth bubbles at just the right time. Edges curl. The aroma changes from burnt apology to golden approval. The crowd cheers. Mother Crisp grunts, adequate. The punishment is over. You later learn this ritual isn't rare. In fact, it's part of a broader system of food-based accountability. If a butcher sold spoiled meat, they had to eat a bite in front of witnesses. If a brewer served weak pulque, they were dunked in it. If a baker undersalted ceremonial bread, they were forced to compose a song explaining their failure. Historians still argue about the origins of these punishments. Some say they were meant to elevate the sacredness of food. Others claim they were just really entertaining ways to get people to pay attention. Either way, they worked. That evening, you share a meal with the now redeemed apprentice. His hair still smells like toasted maize, and he winces every time someone claps near his head. "I'll never rush the dough again," he says solemnly. You raise your tortilla in salute to crispness. He grins, and second chances. You've been here long enough to know the rules. Don't borrow feathers, don't wear sacred shoes, don't tamper with cacao. But today, you encounter a regulation so oddly specific it feels like the gods made it up just to stay amused. Matchmaking. Yes, apparently, unauthorized matchmaking is a punishable offense. You discover this while lounging near a weaving circle, enjoying the rhythmic clack of backstrap looms, and the occasional gossip about whose daughter is seeing whose cousin's flute tutor. A heated conversation erupts nearby, two families, arms waving, voices rising. The center of it all, a woman known as Aunt Tekka. Aunt Tekka is smiling, calm, too calm. You lean in. Turns out she arranged a marriage between two young people without consulting the official matchmaker, or the local priest, or either set of parents. Worse, she did it for a small fee and a bundle of dried peppers. The horror. In Aztec society, marriages were deeply structured, often brokered by appointed matchmakers called Cihuatlamacasque. These women were trained not only in the social compatibilities of families, but in astrological signs, ritual omens, and the mysterious art of marital bird observation. Yes, sometimes your wedding depended on whether a heron landed nearby. Aunt Tekka ignored all of that. Now, she faces the consequences. Her punishment? The matrimonial apology tour. This is a 3-day event in which the accused must visit every household involved, parents, siblings, neighbors, extended aunts, and deliver a formal, memorized apology in verse. The apology is standard, an ancient poem about social harmony, community fabric, and the danger of love unvetted, but it must be performed with emotion, in a clear voice, and without sarcastic eye rolls. A priest oversees each recital, holding a large squash gourd that he strikes dramatically if she mumbles. You attend the first stop. It's amazing. Aunt Tekka, cheeks flushed, stands in a tiny courtyard. She bows low, clears her throat, and begins, O house of maize, forgive my tongue that wove a knot not yet begun. The chili was sweet, the peppers dry, but still I meddled, now I sigh. The parents nod solemnly. One wipes a tear. She moves to the next house. And the next. By day 2, she's got rhythm. People begin to request lines. Children chant along. A flute player joins for backup. It's slowly becoming a festival. But Aunt Tekka's face, still mortified. You ask a local official if this is typical. He nods. Marriage is sacred. It's not for amateurs or pepper-based bartering. Historians still argue how formalized matchmaking really was in daily practice. Codices show arranged marriages with ceremonial foot-washing and elder approval. But oral tradition is full of cheeky stories about runaway couples, hidden love poems, and romantic mischief. The truth is probably both structured and spicy. By the end of the 3rd day, Aunt Tekka completes her tour. Her final performance ends with a deep bow, and the priest, looking vaguely moved, declares her forgiven. She's gifted a small jar of honey and a decorative squash. People cheer. That night she sits beside you, tired but smiling. I meant well, she says. I know. I still think they make a good match. You glance across the plaza. The young couple are sharing tamales and giggling. Looks promising. Just, next time, you suggest gently, maybe ask the heron first. She laughs. And you both agree, love is powerful. But in Tenochtitlan, even Cupid needs a permit. You've learned many things in Tenochtitlan. Never disrespect feathers, watch your tortilla timing, and always double-check your sandals. But today, you're about to discover a far spicier lesson, one that involves greed, chili peppers, and a level of discomfort best described as memorable. It starts innocently enough. You're browsing the grain stalls, admiring a pyramid of maize so geometrically satisfying it could be on currency, when a commotion erupts just 2 stalls over. 2 women are shouting. One is a customer, the other, a merchant with a suspiciously smug expression. The issue? Overcharging for maize. Specifically, the merchant has been caught inflating her prices during a time of community scarcity, an offense known locally as price stacking, or more colorfully, the maize sin. And in the Aztec world, this is serious. You see, maize isn't just food, it's life. The people are the children of maize, molded from its dough by gods themselves. Cheating someone over maize is like siphoning life from their soul and trying to profit off sacred abundance. That's more than greed. It's cosmological rudeness. The tribunal is swift. After a brief inspection of the weight stones, standardized objects used to regulate trade fairness, and a few witness statements, including one very angry elder with an inventory ledger woven into her belt, the verdict is clear. The merchant is guilty. The punishment? The chili trial. You think this might be metaphorical. It is not. She is led to a public stage. A bowl of ground chili paste, thick, red, and glistening with oil, is prepared. It is not served with tortillas. It is applied, Under supervision, a ceremonial cloth soaked in the paste is tied over her mouth and nose for exactly 13 heartbeats. It's not torture. It's ritual. The idea is not to harm, but to cleanse the tongue that tried to deceive. The chili serves as a sacred fire, purging dishonesty with a full nasal and emotional reset. You watch as the cloth is removed. Her eyes are watering, her breathing ragged, but she says nothing because she's not allowed to speak for an hour. That's part of the sentence too, a silent hour of spicy reflection. Children cheer. A flute is played. Someone in the crowd sells commemorative tamales with mild salsa out of respect. You speak to an older vendor afterward, a man with hands like bark and a voice like falling leaves. He tells you this form of justice has been used for generations. Long ago, even nobles were made to taste the chili cloth if they corrupted markets. Historians still argue about this tradition, some claiming it's exaggerated in colonial retellings, others pointing to codices showing red-faced figures seated beside censers and spice bowls. You believe it's real, you just saw it. Later that day, the merchant returns to her stall. Her prices are fair now, very fair. You buy a small bundle of blue maize. She hands it over without a word, but with a very respectful bow. You smile, not in mockery, but in recognition. Justice here isn't about revenge, it's about resetting balance. When things get out of alignment, when maize costs too much, or tortillas are raw, or feathers are misappropriated, there's always a way to realign, even if it involves chili in the nose. That night, over a modest meal of tamales and squash, you reflect on your own little deceptions. That time you tried to overstate how good you were at basket weaving, or the time you pretended to know what nixtamalization meant. You make a quiet vow to be honest, to be fair, and above all, to never overcharge anyone for corn. You've done well lately, no chili punishments, no accidental impersonations, and your sandals, perfectly legal. Life has been calm, almost too calm. Which is probably why the gods send you a lesson. It begins with shoes, specifically, the emperor's shoes. You're in the artisan quarter, marveling at an exhibit of high-status regalia laid out for an upcoming festival. Items are being cleaned, perfumed, polished gold nose rings, obsidian mirrors, jaguar pelt cloaks, and then, there they are, a pair of sandals on a ceremonial mat. Gold-accented soles, painted heel straps, feathers like sunrays, not for wearing, not even for touching. They're the emperor's festival sandals, and they are sacred. You don't touch them, of course. You're not a fool, but you do something arguably worse. You make a joke. To a friend, too loudly. Something about how they'd probably give you divine blisters anyway, or how you'd trip and end up starting a new religion. There's a beat of silence. A few heads turn. Then, disaster, one of the emperor's ceremonial shoe handlers glares directly at you. He says nothing, just makes a subtle hand gesture. Within the hour, you are summoned. Now let's be clear. You didn't physically insult the shoes, but you mocked them, and by extension, mocked the authority of the Litoani, the speaker-ruler, believed to act on behalf of the gods. And if there's one thing the Aztecs do not tolerate, it's irreverence toward divine authority via footwear commentary. The punishment? You are sentenced to the walk of humility. You must traverse 3 city sectors, wearing a pair of oversized reed sandals, intentionally clumsy, intentionally awkward, while carrying a placard that reads, "Not all shoes are mine to judge." You're also forbidden to speak during the walk, except for 3 prescribed apologies, repeated hourly to whoever will listen. And of course, you are being followed, not by guards, by gossipy grandmothers, specifically assigned to loudly critique your posture, vocabulary, and level of remorse. They take their job seriously. At first, you're mortified, then resigned, then oddly philosophical. You pass street dancers, priests, and vendors who nod solemnly or offer you supportive squash seeds. A child tries to swap shoes with you. One man tries to sell you an "I survived the shoe walk" commemorative sash. You decline. Historians still argue about the seriousness of these symbolic punishments. Some think they were theatrical scoldings, more than actual criminal sentences, performative justice, meant to reinforce social respect. Others suggest that for commoners, even minor slights were crucial reminders of divine hierarchy. You believe both. By the final sector, your legs ache, your dignity has blistered, and your sandals are beginning to talk back. But you've also been given countless cups of water, 2 oranges, and a note from a young boy that simply reads, "Be nice to shoes." You reach the finish line, a small altar where you place the reed sandals and recite your final apology. Some steps are not mine to fill. It feels genuine. Afterward, the tribunal thanks you. They return your original footwear. One official even gives you a salve for sandal rash. That night you sit beneath a humming tree, feet soaking in cool water, shoes neatly aligned. You realize that respect here isn't just fear or formality, it's a kind of daily reverence, for tools, for rituals, for people, even for shoes. You whisper a quiet apology to the emperor's sandals. And maybe, just maybe, they forgive you. You're beginning to think peace is overrated. Or at least brief. Because just when you find your rhythm, market volunteering, shrine sweeping, tortilla flipping, you stumble onto one of the most dangerous missteps possible in the Aztec world. You accidentally observe a warrior school examination. You weren't trying to. You were just following the scent of grilled squash near the Eagle Knight compound when you heard shouting. The kind of rhythmic, precise shouting that only happens during something sacred or deeply unpleasant. You peek around a stone column. What you see is awe-inspiring. A group of teens barefoot, faces painted with jaguar stripes, backs straight as arrows, stand in a training yard. One by one they're handed wooden clubs. Behind them, elders hold score marking stones. Every student must perform a warrior kata, a series of strikes, shouts, lunges, and rolls performed in exact rhythm with ceremonial drums. Mess up the rhythm, points off. Drop your club, points off. Breathe wrong, don't ask. You watch, entranced. One student, barely taller than your shoulder, executes a flawless series of spinning lunges. Another stumbles on a backward roll, and the judges wince. And then, because fate loves drama, you sneeze. Loudly. Everything stops. 20 heads turn. One elder coughs. The training officer narrows his eyes. Spectators, he says, must be registered. You are not registered. You are, in fact, the opposite of registered. You are unauthorized civilian presence in a warrior rite, and in Aztec society, that's not just nosiness, it's a breach of sacred military secrecy. The students are ushered away. You are summoned. Your offense: unauthorized observation, interruption of sacred cadence, disruption of the educational military continuum. The punishment? You must undergo a symbolic trial of failure, a public reenactment of what happens when one fails warrior school. This is not subtle. You're handed a dull wooden club, a child-sized training tunic very itchy, and a headband with "Unprepared One" painted across the front in dramatic red. Then, in the very same courtyard, you must attempt the training routine, backward. That's the penalty, a reverse kata. You're instructed to shout the wrong phrases at the wrong moments, swing the club with the wrong hand, and trip safely at every jump. You are, for one glorious hour, the embodiment of martial failure. A crowd gathers, children laugh, some chant the name of the student you interrupted. He bows grandly. One elder throws flower petals sarcastically. And yet, it's kind of fun. You flail, you stumble, you yell, "I forgot my lessons," in 3 different cadences. The trainer circles you, shaking his head and muttering things like, "Truly a featherless turkey." It's humbling. It's hilarious. And strangely, it works. You learn more about warrior training in that hour than you could have by watching quietly. How coordination is tied to breath, how balance depends on foot placement, and how deeply ingrained the warrior's rhythm is in the pulse of the empire. Later, you speak with one of the student elders. He tells you the fail right is traditional, used for students who cheat or skip drills or fail to show respect. It's not to shame them, he says. It's to remind them what happens when we go unprepared into the world. He hands you a pendant shaped like a jaguar claw. "Keep training," he says with a grin. You wear it for the rest of the day. And when a young warrior in training asks if you'll be back tomorrow to fail some more, you laugh and say, "Maybe, but this time on purpose." That night your muscles ache in weird places, and your pride feels oddly massaged. You may not be a warrior, but you understand them now. Their training isn't just about combat, it's about rhythm, respect, and readiness. Even when the enemy is your own clumsy feet. Today, the plaza is draped in color. Strips of crimson, violet, and obsidian flutter from tall poles. Musicians rehearse haunting flute melodies. Dancers in feathered skirts practice intricate steps, spinning like clockwork under the watchful gaze of temple officials. A festival is coming. Specifically, Tenochtitlan, the Flaying Festival. It's both springtime renewal and deeply unsettling ritual. The city is preparing for a week of combat, performance, and deeply symbolic pageantry. And that's when you see him. A young man barefoot, radiant with excitement, painted with spirals, dancing joyfully in the street. He wears a costume, but not just any costume. It's the ceremonial garb of the Toltec priesthood, skin-colored robe, bone mask, golden ribbons around his wrists. It's beautiful, flawlessly assembled, and completely unauthorized. He twirls past a market stall, unaware of the gaping mouths behind him. You realize too late. He's dancing 3 days early, wearing a restricted costume, without having undergone any of the rituals. In Aztec society, festivals aren't free-for-alls. They're tightly choreographed rituals with precise timing, roles, and symbols. Dressing like a god, especially Toltec, the flayed one, outside of sanctioned rites, is like marching into a courtroom wearing the judge's robe while doing the chicken dance. Sacrilegious and confusing. Officials descend fast. The dancer freezes mid-twirl. The flute cuts off with a sour squeak. You hear someone mutter, "He mocked the second skin." The punishment? He must wear a half costume for the remainder of the festival. This means one sleeve, one shoe, half a headdress, and a painted-on mouth that never quite smiles. He must walk the festival grounds, assisting real priests, while answering every question about rituals with the phrase, "I spoke too soon." He does this for 5 days. Day 1, miserable. Day 2, philosophical. By day 4, he's practically a tour guide, explaining rites, folding ceremonial robes, handing out chili-free tamales to confused tourists. Historians still argue whether such penalties were real or later dramatic embellishments. Some say public half-dressing served to remind onlookers of the cost of impatience. Others see it as educational theater, a way to gently correct and reintegrate youthful enthusiasm. Either way, it's working. The youth, once giddy and reckless, is now deeply informed. He answers visitors' questions with honesty, helps elders cross temple stairs, and even learns the correct chants by heart. On the final day, the high priest nods to him. "Next year," he says, "you may wear both sleeves." You catch his smile. It's genuine now, less performative, more earned. That night, as the final fires burn and the feathered dancers swirl under moonlight, you sit beside him on the temple steps. You ask what he learned. He thinks for a while. "Costumes are fun," he says, "but being part of the story is better." You nod. Somewhere in the distance, a drumbeat fades into the hush of lake winds. And just like that, the festival ends. You've begun the day in a good mood. No looming tribunals, no angry vendors, no ritualized humiliation in sight. You're helping to gather flowers for an altar dedication, simple, soothing, fragrant. What could possibly go wrong? The answer, as always, is someone dug up a tomb. You hear the commotion before you see it, a buzz of whispers, clattering sandals, the unmistakable gasp of someone dropping a clay bowl. You follow the sound to a shaded plaza where two boys are being held by market guards, one of them still clutching a carved skull. Not just any skull, a decorated funerary skull, complete with jade inlays and a delicate headdress made of macaw feathers. They didn't find it, they took it. From a sealed noble tomb outside the city. You brace yourself. In the Aztec worldview, the dead are not simply gone. They live on in layered afterworlds, cycling through realms governed by gods of wind, fire, obsidian, and bones. Tombs are portals, sacred spaces. To disturb them is not just rude, it's cosmically dangerous. And worse, these boys tried to sell the skull. For a gourd of pulque and 2 capes. The tribunal convenes within the hour. The elders listen, grim-faced. The boys claim ignorance, said they thought the tomb was abandoned, that the skull was just old art. The sentence? The procession of remorse. For 9 days, the boys must carry replicas of the skulls, carefully made from maize dough and decorated with ash, through the city. They stop at every major shrine and recite a prepared apology. We disturbed what must be still, we touched what must be sacred. Forgive our hands, teach our hearts. They wear gray cloaks with black trim mourning garments. At each temple, they place 1 doe skull on the altar, then burn a sprig of copal resin. But here's the twist, they aren't alone. Each day, a different family of tomb keepers joins them. These are lineages responsible for tending to burial shrines, each with songs, rituals, and stories passed down through generations. It becomes, slowly, a public lesson in reverence. The community watches, listens, learns. You ask an elder whether this is typical. He nods. Grave robbing is a theft of time. They must return it, moment by moment. Historians still argue how widespread tomb raiding really was. Colonial accounts describe it as common. Aztec codices show strict punishments, but often in symbolic terms: mud masks, silence periods, long fasting. Some think the doe skull ritual might have been invented later. Others say it's as old as the empire. You believe it's real. It feels real. On the 9th day, the boys place the final skull on a floating altar and send it down the canal. The community gathers in silence as it drifts into the mist. Then, a priest steps forward and blesses the water with a chant of forgiveness. One boy weeps. The other clasps his hands and whispers something you can't hear. They're forgiven. That night, you sit near the tomb they disturbed. Offerings of marigold and cacao have been laid around it, quiet, careful, respectful. A single flute plays somewhere nearby. You leave a petal on the threshold, not because you were guilty, but because now you understand the gravity of what lies beneath. The Aztecs didn't fear death, they honored it. But they also knew, disturbing the bones of the past disturbs the balance of the present. You step away quietly. It's market day again, and you've developed a reputation. Not as a criminal, those days are behind you, but as something arguably more dangerous in Tenochtitlan, a curious person with too many questions. So when you wander over to the grain stalls and innocently ask, "Hey, how do you know if someone's cheating the weight stones?" you attract three things instantly. A suspicious stare from a merchant, a nod of approval from an old woman selling beans, an invitation to watch justice unfold. Apparently, your timing is exquisite, because a local merchant, a thin man with an impressively waxed mustache, has just been caught falsifying grain weights. Now you may think, what's the big deal? A few pebbles here, a hollow scale there. But in the Aztec market system, weights and measures were sacred. The entire economy relied on mutual trust, community inspection, and a shared understanding that deception at the scales was theft, not only from people, but from the gods who watched over trade. It's not just about the maize, it's about the math of honor. So when a customer noticed her 2-stone sack of amaranth came up suspiciously light, she took it straight to the tribunal. And now, you're here for the sentencing. The punishment? The fire pit stall. For 3 days, the merchant must operate his stall next to an active chili roasting fire pit. Not beside it, politely in it. His stall is moved to within arm's reach of the blazing hearth, where dried chilies are roasted for ceremonial spice bundles. The heat unbearable. The smoke relentless. His eyes water, his nose runs, but he must measure grain precisely, with a priest auditing every scoop. Any error and he starts over. Why such a punishment? Because it mirrors the discomfort he imposed on others, forcing them to suffer short waits and long prices. Now he gets no rest, no breeze, just the sting of smoke and the pressure of accuracy. There's also a sign above his stall, "I measure truly now." Harsh, maybe, effective, absolutely. By day 2, he's been reduced to blinking silence, but every bag of maize he sells is perfect. Some customers even test the weights themselves, finding them true to the pebble. His reputation, once sleek and unchallenged, now includes the phrase extra spicy but honest. You learn from a market official that weight fraud was a monitored offense. Inspectors carried standard stones and could test merchants randomly. Falsification led to fines, public correction, or, as in this case, smoke-based penance. Historians still debate how frequent this was. Some codices show diagrams of scale punishments. One even shows a merchant being gently singed while holding a bowl of beans. Others suggest this system was rare, reserved for repeat offenders or those who tampered with official tribute weights. Whatever the frequency, the message is clear. Truth is heavy. It must be measured, balanced, and protected. On the 3rd day, the merchant is relieved of his sentence. His eyes are red, but he bows deeply and gifts the customer who reported him a full sack of amaranth, plus a jar of cooling ointment for chili exposure. You pass his stall later. He smiles weakly. "Still measuring?" He nods, "With my eyes closed now." You raise an eyebrow. "Kidding," he says quickly. That night, you eat roasted maize near the canal and marvel at the blend of law, humor, and heat that governs this place. Aztec justice isn't always about blood or spectacle. Sometimes, it's about a nose full of habanero truth. The sun rises over the lake in thick golden waves, and you, being your increasingly cautious self, have started taking sunrise walks to get ahead of trouble. You've readjusted your sandals, refused all unauthorized tortillas, and even politely declined a very shady offer to bless your dreams with jaguar powder. You're ready for a smooth day. So it's especially unfair when you stumble, literally, into someone's punishment. A man, face down in a temple courtyard, is being gently prodded with a broom, not harshly, just enough to wake him. He doesn't move. Eventually, two officials roll him upright, and you realize he's not injured, he's just asleep. Again. You're told by a nearby flower vendor that he is a temple watchman. His job? Simple: stay awake at night, watch for intruders, keep the incense burning, whisper short prayers when the wind shifts. And he has failed, repeatedly. Falling asleep once might have earned a warning. But 3 times? That's a cosmic negligence. In Aztec belief, certain roles were seen as literal extensions of divine surveillance. A temple watchman wasn't just guarding bricks, he was guarding the thread between the mortal world and the gods. A break in attention, a break in harmony. His punishment? He is assigned the hour of echoes. Here's how it works. For the next 7 nights he must walk the entire temple compound each hour, stopping at 12 marked locations. At each he must call out a phrase, not loud, not frantic, just firm. I am awake, I see the breath of the gods. If no one hears him, he starts over. If he forgets a stop, starts over. If he mispronounces a word, back to hour 1. It's grueling, not because it's painful, but because it demands exactly what he failed to provide: steady presence. You're allowed to shadow him on the 2nd night. It's haunting. The compound at night is all cold stone and wind-borne whispers. Owls blink from shadowed perches. The smell of burning copal hangs thick. He walks barefoot, lips dry, voice ragged, but he doesn't miss a single station. By night 4, he has a rhythm. By night 6, others quietly walk with him: priests, novices, even an old woman who says she used to do the same task years ago. It becomes communal. On the final night, he finishes his last circuit as the first light touches the East Temple. A bell sounds, not for punishment but for completion. He kneels. The high priest approaches and ties a small obsidian charm to his wrist, a silent marker of resilience. You speak with him afterward. He's exhausted, but awake. Will you fall asleep again, you ask. He smiles, only when the gods do. Historians note that Aztec society emphasized vigilance, not just militarily, but spiritually. Roles like guards, midwives, and fire tenders were bound by sacred attentiveness. Punishments for failing those duties often involved corrective repetition, restoring rhythm to a life thrown out of sync. You sit beneath the temple steps, watching the new watchman, a cheerful young novice, take up his first post. For once, you're not in trouble. You just learned something. The gods don't need perfection. But they do expect you to stay awake when it matters. It's early morning, and the mist still clings to the canal waters like breath on a mirror. You're delivering a small jar of tamarind paste to the neighborhood herbalist when you hear it. A panicked shout, followed by the unmistakable clatter of ceramic. You turn the corner just in time to witness a scene that would make any Aztec pulse quicken. A man gaunt, twitching slightly, eyes darting, clutches a bundle of herbs in one hand and a carved bone charm in the other. He's being confronted by 2 midwives and a priest, not accused of theft, of witchcraft. The line between healer and hexer in Aztec society is exquisitely thin. Plants, chants, even bone carvings can mean protection or poison. Sacred breathwork, done wrong, looks like summoning, and when someone starts coughing dark blood after drinking your tea, you'd better hope your paperwork is perfect. This man's error was not the herbs themselves, but his lack of registration. Every healer, herbalist, or spiritual guide was expected to be known to the temple and reviewed by council. His remedies came with no blessings, no ceremonies, and no written lineage. That makes him suspect. The tribunal arrives by midday. He pleads not guilty, says he was only repeating what his grandmother taught him, and that the bone charm was for attracting hummingbirds. It didn't work. But the signs are there: patients complaining of strange dreams, a child who refused to speak after a visit, and a series of burned offerings left at the wrong shrine. The court's decision? He is sentenced to a rite of entangling. For 13 days he must sit in the public herbal yard, under guard, and slowly identify plant by plant his entire personal remedy collection. Each item is tested by 3 certified midwives and a priest. If it checks out, approved. If it doesn't, burned in ceremonial fire. But that's not the real punishment. During the entire ritual, he must wear a painted clay mask, half serene healer, half snarling jaguar, and when asked a question, he must always answer first with, "I was mistaken, and now I learn." It's grueling, educational, humiliating. He becomes a living lesson. Each day, students from the temple's medical school come to observe. They learn both herbs and caution. Children walk past and chant the phrase back to him, some sweetly, some not. Historians still argue whether this form of justice was a real part of medical practice or a ceremonial invention. Some believe it evolved from earlier fire purification rites. Others point to oral histories of similar events, masked confessionals, wandering herbalists made to retake oaths. You watch the man through it all. On day 4, he correctly identifies a rare fungus. On day 6, he quietly admits one powder was mislabeled. On day 10, he weeps while crushing dried amaranth root, his grandmother's favorite cure. And on the final day, he is allowed to remove the mask. His head is shaved. His satchel is replaced with a new one, marked with the temple's seal. The priest blesses his hands with flower water and copal smoke. He is now certified. That night you speak with one of the midwives. She tells you the line between healer and danger is not in the tool, but in the intention and the training. We all borrow power from the gods, she says. The mistake is thinking it's yours alone. You nod. The moon hangs low and full above the lake, silver ripples dancing across the water. You fall asleep wondering what other lines you've unknowingly tiptoed across. And grateful, so grateful, that your tamarind paste was properly labeled. You're back at the shrine of the maize goddess, helping arrange flower bundles along the base of the altar when a priest suddenly stops mid-prayer. His face goes still, his eyes lift, then narrow, and he turns slowly to the northeast. Something's coming. No, not a storm. An omen. You hear the whispers first, then see the crowd forming. Not panicked but reverent, tense. A group of fishermen rush into the plaza carrying a strange object wrapped in woven reeds. It's a heron. But not just any heron. Its feathers are white and red rare. Its eyes look odd. Its feet are stained with blue clay. One of the fishers claims it flew in circles over the market before landing atop the tax collector's house. An omen. And not a good one. In Aztec society, omens aren't superstitions, they're interruptions in the normal order. Signs that the gods have stepped in with a warning, a message, or a test. Everyone takes them seriously, and the correct response is always the same. Act. Immediately. But someone didn't. Specifically, the tax collector's apprentice. He saw the heron. He watched it land. He did nothing. No report, no offering, no ritual alert. He just went inside, said it was probably just a weird bird. This is, by all accounts, a mistake of cosmic proportions. He is called before a council of priests. His punishment? He must perform the ritual of rectification. For 8 nights he is tasked with retracing the heron's path, walking from shrine to shrine, carrying a clay effigy of the bird, painted in exact colors, and asking forgiveness at each stop. At every shrine, he must offer a bundle of apology items: blue maize, black beans, 3 feathers, and a whisper. Yes, a whisper. He is to speak the same sentence at each offering. I ignored what was sacred. May the silence I left now speak. Each time he whispers it, a priest beside him rings a soft bell, echoing what should have been sounded at the heron's first landing. Historians still debate the role of omens in Aztec governance. Some describe elaborate rituals triggered by falling stars, deformed animals, or oddly shaped maize. Others suggest that local officials often dramatize these moments to maintain religious discipline. You watch the apprentice as he moves through the rituals. He's not punished with pain. He's punished with presence, repetition, shame turned to action. At one shrine, a child asks him, "Did the bird talk to you?" He doesn't laugh, he just kneels. "No," he says, "but I should have answered anyway." By the final night, a full moon rises. He places the clay heron in a reed basket and floats it out onto the lake. A flute plays from the shore. A priest casts maize petals after it. The bird drifts into darkness. That night, the apprentice is seen quietly cleaning the steps of the tax collector's office unasked, a gesture of extra devotion. You ask one of the priests if the gods are still angry. "Maybe," he says, "but they love a good apology." And you watch the moon ripple across the water and wonder how many omens you've missed in your own life, how many signs passed off as coincidence, how often silence might have been a test. The heron didn't return, but the whisper echoed. The sun is high and the air thick with music, drums, flutes, ankle rattles made of shells. You've found a good spot in the shade, watching the ritual dancers rehearse for the upcoming feast of the Fire Lords. It's mesmerizing. Swirling skirts, rhythmic stomping, arms carving circles through sunlight. And then someone laughs. Not just a giggle, an actual snort. It cuts across the plaza like a misfired arrow. Heads turn. A priest pauses mid-drum. The dancers freeze mid-spin. All eyes swivel toward the culprit. It's a young man, trying to muffle his laughter, holding a piece of fruit. He shakes his head and mutters something about the wiggle steps. He's doomed. You learn quickly that mocking a ritual dance is not just impolite, it's profoundly disrespectful. In the Aztec world, ritual dances are not performances. They are prayers made physical. Each step is an invocation, each gesture a sacred line in an unspoken poem to the gods. Laughter, especially unsanctioned laughter, is pollution. It invites chaos into order. The man is seized, not cruelly, but firmly. He insists it wasn't meant as mockery, just a bad reaction to a particularly enthusiastic hip twirl. Doesn't matter. He is sentenced to a cycle of contrition. The terms? For the next 5 days he must join the dancers, not as a participant, but as a prop. Each day, he is assigned a role: a tree, a mountain, a sacred deer, a decorative pot. He must hold position, stay still, and maintain character through the entire rehearsal. Day 1, he's a tree. He stands motionless while dancers whirl around him, occasionally brushing his arms with maize fronds. Day 2, a hill. He's draped in brown cloth and required to hum low wind sounds. Day 3, a jaguar spirit, which sounds cool, until you realize he must crouch and purr through 2 hours of choreography. By day 4, he's surprisingly good at it. He's taking his hill energy seriously. The priest overseeing the punishment even commends his pot phase for emotional nuance. Day 5 is his final test. He must perform a solo apology dance, improvised, incorporating at least 3 of the roles he played. It's awkward. It's earnest. It's oddly beautiful. The crowd claps. The priest bows. The dancers, once furious, offer him roasted squash and a flower crown which, to be fair, is mostly symbolic and slightly wilted. You sit with him afterward. He's drenched in sweat, emotionally shredded, but smiling. "I get it now," he says. "Dancing isn't showy, it's sacred breath." You nod, also hard. Historians still argue about these rituals. Some believe punishment dancing evolved from performance-based shaming traditions. Others see it as a clever tool to transform disruption into education. You're just glad he didn't end up being the pot twice. That night, as drums echo gently across the lake, you lie in bed imagining yourself as a ceremonial hill, unmoving, full of sacred presence, completely silent. At least until you dream about being the jaguar. And purr. Loudly. You're in the artisan district today, helping a dye seller sort through baskets of indigo, cochineal red, and crushed turquoise. The air smells like clay, smoke, and crushed marigold. It's a good kind of chaos. You're elbow deep in a pile of flower-dyed wool when someone nearby screams. You freeze. The crowd parts like a startled flock, and there, standing in the open, shoulders slumped, is a young man. His arms and neck are covered in fresh tattoos. Nothing unusual, right? Except he's wearing the cloak of a junior priest, and the symbols on his arms, warrior glyphs. Very illegal ones. He's been caught tattooing himself with ranked insignia, designs reserved for elite jaguar knights and eagle warriors. His ink is good, too good, but his deeds, non-existent. He's never been to battle. He's never taken a captive. He's never even survived a chili smoking rite. In Aztec society, tattoos are serious business. Not just personal flair, but status documents worn on the skin. A warrior's ink is earned, not picked from a menu. Certain symbols like the obsidian fang or the sun step are sacred. Wearing them without merit is like forging metals. The punishment? He's sentenced to ink reversal. It's not removal. That would be wasteful. Instead, over the course of 4 days, his tattoos will be ceremonially overwritten with symbols of penance. The original lines will remain, but transformed. A sun step becomes a teardrop. A jaguar paw becomes a coiled snail. An eagle plume, now a looped maize husk. Not shameful, exactly, but very clearly corrective. The rewriting is done publicly, by trained tattooists, with a priest chanting over each transformation. The ink is laced with bitter herbs to reinforce humility. As each symbol is remade, the offender must name the glyph, then declare, "This was not mine, I offer it back." You watch as people pass by, not laughing, not jeering, but watching, quietly absorbing the lesson. You ask an apprentice tattooist if this is common. He shrugs. More than you'd think. Some want glory ink before they've earned the scars. This reminds them, the skin is a scroll. It tells a story. Don't lie in the margins. Historians still argue whether ink reversal was standard or rare. Codices show tattoo transformations, but some believe these were metaphorical. Others point to actual glyph manuals where correction overlays are diagrammed in detail. You believe what you're seeing. By the end of the 4th day, the man's arms are filled with hybrid symbols, not ugly, not mocking, just true. His last one is a spiral reed with the glyph for unfinished. He stands, bows. The priest hands him a pot of calendula salve. "It will sting," the priest says, "but so did ambition." That night you sit by the fire staring at your own unmarked forearms, clean, honest, and, for the moment, enough. You whisper to the night sky, "No need for symbols I haven't earned," and feel strangely proud. There's a chicken in the plaza. Now, this in itself is not strange. Chickens appear in Aztec markets occasionally, though they aren't native and aren't exactly revered like turkeys or ducks. But this chicken is different. For one, it's wearing a tiny amulet. For 2, it is currently being exorcised. You edge closer, alongside a small gathering of curious market-goers. A priest is waving incense over the bird, muttering rapid-fire prayers. The chicken clucks once, long and dramatically, and then flaps into the arms of a boy who promptly begins sobbing. It's chaos, beautiful ritual chaos. Eventually, you piece it together. Someone placed a curse on this chicken, or so it's believed. The family says it began laying black speckled eggs and refusing to roost under any shrine roof. One day, it walked directly into a sacred incense burner during a naming ceremony and disrupted the ritual. The priest, after some inspection, agrees that the bird shows signs of having been used in folk sorcery, a fringe practice deeply frowned upon, especially when animals are involved. The culprit, a local woman who moonlights as a potion seller. She claims innocence, but neighbors say she was seen chanting aggressively near feathers and once tried to sell blessing eggs for luck. She's brought before the temple tribunal. Her crime? Using an animal in unauthorized ritual magic. And arguably worse, scaring children during a naming rite. Her punishment? She must perform the cleansing circuit. For 7 days, she will walk the public markets, carrying the same chicken now freed of its amulet and declared ritually neutral, and explain to anyone who asks. This is not a sacred bird. This is not a cursed bird. This is a creature, and I have learned. Each day she wears a sash reading, "Student of the Real," and she must collect 7 affirmations, 1 from a priest, 1 from a midwife, 1 from a cook, 1 from a market guard, and 3 from children. If the chicken pecks her during a speech, she must start that day's count over. You watch her on day 3. The chicken is cranky, the children are merciless, but she perseveres, speaking earnestly, learning correct phrases, nodding humbly when corrected. Someone even gives her a ritual egg to hold. She bows. By day 7, she completes her affirmations. The chicken, declared emotionally repaired. She is forgiven. The bird is gifted to a quiet elder who agrees to treat it with neither magic nor mockery. Its name, Pepito. Historians are fascinated by these odd, hyper-specific rituals. Some claim animal-related mischief was common in rural communities and handled with local charm. Others say it reflects Aztec values of ritual order and respect for roles, both human and feathered. You sit with the woman afterward. She's feeding Pepito tiny cactus seeds. "Are you done with magic?" you ask. She nods. "I'll stick to ointments and poetry, maybe hats." You smile. "Just not for chickens." She laughs. "No promises." That night, as stars settle over the temples and the sound of flutes rises with the moon, you wonder how many other animals have stumbled into history by accident. Probably more than you'd guess. But only one gets their own sash. It's your last week in Tenochtitlan, and something strange is happening. People are thanking you. A vendor slips you an extra tamale. A priest nods at you mid-chant. Even a temple guard, normally carved from sheer disapproval, offers a polite "you again" with a smile. Why? Because today you're accompanying a visiting delegation through the city, helping explain justice practices. You, a former offender of sandals, pulque, feathers, tortillas, and time itself, are now an informal guide. The irony is delicious. You lead them past the tribute storage house, once home to the infamous grain fraud, the shrine of market balances. Yes, the chili pit is still hot, and the corridor of the warrior school, the very one where you flailed backward with pride. But as you narrate, you realize you've absorbed something deeper than just trivia. These laws, bizarre, poetic, occasionally itchy, aren't just about control. They're about correction with continuity. Justice here doesn't end in a cage. It becomes a story, one you wear, one you walk through. It's etched into masks and dance steps, painted on maize and echoed in the breath of the gods. And now, here comes your final stop, the Temple of Rebalancing. Inside, they perform symbolic reenactments of past punishments, not cruelly, not to mock, but to honor the lesson. Actors recite apologies in verse. A child pretends to carry a fake cacao fraud gourd. You catch yourself smiling. At the center of the temple is a huge mural. It's chaotic. People in shame caps, fire pits, dancers mid-stumble, but somehow it all connects. A spiral of mistakes turning toward light. One priest approaches and hands you a small clay tablet. It reads, "Return is not retreat. The step back is a turning." Then he says, "You've walked the path, you've laughed, you've learned, now you teach." You're silent for a moment. Then for once you bow first. You head back toward the lake, sandals quiet on the stone. Behind you, the city drums echo slow and sure and full of rhythm. You remember feathers and chili masks and dancing as a pot. You remember the law of balance. Not punishment for punishment's sake, but stories that guide people back to center. You sit by the water. A heron passes, the stars bloom above. You did it. You survived the Aztec justice system. And somewhere, deep in the cosmos, a god chuckles and checks your name off the list. The fire is low now, its glow soft against the stone. The markets have gone quiet. No footsteps, no drums, just the hush of lake water lapping against the city's roots, and the distant flicker of starlight reflected in the canal. You've walked far tonight, through flower-strewn plazas and cloud-swept temples, past guards with feathers on their brows and cooks who test their tortillas 3 times before offering them to the gods. You've seen punishment without cruelty, order without cages, laughter folded into learning. And through it all, you've carried your own story. Not just watched it, but woven into it. Now, as you sit beneath the quiet hum of the sky, your breath deepens, your body eases. You feel the weight of your own rhythm, every step, every word, now part of something older than memory. The gods are still awake, but they're watching gently now. Whatever missteps you've made today, yesterday, or long ago, they're not the end, just footsteps, just echoes waiting to find their way home. So rest. Let the wind soften. Let the moon rock you gently in her lake cradle arms. Tomorrow is another step, and you'll be ready for it.